very excited for this section. Today's been a really interesting day. So we were talking earlier, Ashwin and I, and deciding a little bit about what we've been noting going on at the conference. We saw an enormous amount of programmatic and data yesterday, activation, but we did notice a gap, right? We hadn't really talked about television data. And I think as data practitioners, we're really good at getting the data we can easily collect and clean and manage, and TV data has a legacy of being a little bit messy. You had your panel data, we went into set-top box data, but now we're starting to look more and more at the smart TV data, and that's what we're going to focus on a little bit today. We're going to be able to tie in some of the stuff that we saw earlier with the future of programmatic TV and some of the new currency discussions we saw on Kate's panel with Josh, etc. And so we're going to try to pull it together a little bit. But one thing we wanted to kick off with was the landscape and what's going on with the technology around it and what we can specifically do with the data now, because there has been a lot of changes on that marketplace. And just to kind of paint a picture of it, Ashwin's going to walk us through it. So you want to come up and kind of give everyone the lay of the land?
Thanks. How many of you remember when you could walk up to your television, twist a knob, and discover everything that was on TV? It's good that we have a few of you up here. 1 billion people around the world gave that interface up for cable, for choice. It was something that we were willing to pay for, to give up free TV, to have paid television. There's about 1 billion subscribers around the world. It's, for the first time, a direct connection that a provider has with the consumer over a fixed line, which created a return path, a loop between the consumer and the delivery engine of content. Not to be outdone, a lot of these displays and devices connected to these displays are now connected to the internet, which is an even more robust pipe and one that's profound, as we'll see in a few minutes here. I read a stat when we started our company a little over 8 years ago that according to Ericsson, who provides the channel guide for a lot of cable companies, that we'll spend, as they were referring to the American market, 1.3 years of our life surfing channels on a cable guide. Now you add the millions of titles that are available within each of these catalogs of content you see on the screen, and the fact that you can watch them not only on this screen, but all of these screens. I often find myself, and I'm sure some of you would agree, that the problem now is not finding something to watch. It's, screens like this, which I find to be the most stressful thing I do when I come home from work, is trying to type onto my television. So this was inspiration. This was an inspiration for me and my team when we started Samba. Just a little demo of what we do. We built software applications into smart TVs, one that would observe things that you've watched in the past, and would look at things that are trending so that you would spend less time scrolling and more time watching. It uses data, real-time data that we're gathering from the television. It's an application that people turn on. It's one that you can install and activate when you set up your TV for the first time, and you turn it on by name. It's 100% opt-in, and it leverages data to make content programming more personal. Something that we have to do in order to do this is we have to be able to read content from a variety of different sources, not just the streaming video, but what comes over the air, what comes through cable, and most of that video, as we know, is offline. It's not coming through an internet-delivered service. So what we had to do is figure out how to take offline content understandable to our algorithms and to our machines. And so we invented a piece of technology that's looking at video based on its visual characteristics, analyzing the frames on an individual basis, and trying to determine, well, is this a TV show? Is this a TV commercial? Is this a movie, a video game? And based on visual characteristics, we can identify that content in usually less than a couple of seconds. So with the polling the screen multiple times a second, once we get a certain amount of sample, we can determine the content in real time. When you have this technology in an internet-connected display, you can do some really fun things with data, as you can imagine. So what you're looking at right here is a real-time view of what millions of televisions are telling us. The content that that's being displayed on each of these devices, aggregated and presented in the form of ratings. What you see here is a real-time GRP for the top 8 shows in the United States. We know that certain shows went into commercial break, what happens when they go into commercial break, and then what happens when they come out. Really nice, unique piece of data, but this is not what we do as a business. This is something that a lot of our partners ask for so that they can compare smart TV data to other forms of TV data. And generally what we find is a very high degree of correlation between what sample-based methodologies produce when you compare it to this big data set coming from smart TV. That wasn't always the case. Early on, there was definitely skews, and we wanted to understand those skews more, so I'd like to show you a little bit about what we've done within our own data management platform. What we do as a business is we do produce data and analytics so that people can understand television with the same speed and precision that they understand digital activation. And what we're trying to do is make all of the publishers, whether you're a TV or a digital publisher, basically equivalent in their ability to be addressed and measured by folks on the right. Today, most people would be able to describe a TV audience in terms of gender. Some would be able to do it in terms of age. And that's typically how TV is transacted today. Wouldn't it be nice if you were a bank and you were, say, launching a wealth management product to be able to layer on household income, against a particular TV show to determine if it's the appropriate show to sponsor? What if you were an insurance company and you wanted to know for a particular show or a day part, how many of the people watching that show are in market for a form of insurance, like car insurance or life insurance? As we heard earlier, a number of the publishers would like to give their customers the flexibility to be able to buy against any one of these metrics, and to actually have guarantees from the publisher that you only have to pay for the one that you select. So we think this is a backdrop for where television will likely go and where it will likely transact. We heard Turner earlier say that 50% of the way that they want to sell TV by 2020 will be against one of these audience metrics. So how do we make our data that's sitting right now, coming from smart TVs, available, accessible, and how does it match up with other forms of data? One of the things that many of our manufacturers do is they allow a smartphone to control the television. So you can actually pair your phone with your TV and to be able to control volume and channel. Another thing that we do is we go to broadcasters and say, well, if you would like to include the data that you have from your streaming services on phones, you can include an SDK of ours, and we can actually merge viewership from TV with viewership on apps. And so what we've been able to build up is a registered user base, registered to a household of all the devices that exist within that household people use to watch video. With that foundation, we've licensed data from folks like Axiom, Experian, Epsilon. We've been able to build a set of household attributes for each of these households in thousands of number, in the thousands in number. And so that you can actually describe television along many different purchase intent lines or other purchase behaviors. Certainly, location data became very important to us so that we could actually look at whether the smart TV data was representative. A key part of our exercise was trying to figure out if this data set was useful. And having all these attributes was able to allow us to normalize that data, to figure out what was representative and what wasn't, to rebalance on a geographic basis, a demographic basis, as well as on all these economic terms as well. So I'll leave it to Chad to guide the conversation from here, but typically when we think about applications of this data for the marketing industry, we think about how this data could help our marketers, our partners in this business, plan their TV buys with this data set, how they can use it for addressability, not only on the television, but the TV audience that's using many different screens to watch TV, as well as for measurement and attribution. So I'll turn it over to you. Chad, happy to talk about case studies in any of these three areas.
I feel like this sofa is calling your name. It's like we're on some kind of odd date. This is great, and I think the landscape's really important for everyone to know. What I'm curious about is when I look at this, and we spoke earlier, thinking about this in terms of what we know with set-top box data and what we learned from that, and there was kind of mixed uptake of it, and addressable still is not at scale. How do you think this is going to change the game or overcome different hurdles?
Well, the beauty of a smart TV, by the way, a lot of the TV data sets, the data sets that are available aren't going away. I think panel-based measurement is a very powerful truth set. that we often use to normalize. Return path data from cable providers is going to be useful. Smart TV, the nexus of where I think a lot of our clients find its value is around its speed, its precision, its association with an IP address or one of the device IDs that I was showing earlier. So you can match up with it instantly, and you can get insights instantly. You can build audiences instantly. And certainly the measurement KPIs come available while your campaign is still running, not months after the fact, without many layers of cost as well.
So when you think about IP address and you think about being able to understand what content's playing and what's being watched real time like that, do you anticipate better content optimization in terms of delivery there then?
You bet. So we've been able to see, because we have a link between the television and other screens, you can see the effect that TV advertising has on brand engagement, whether it's site visits, engagement with products, ultimate purchase of products. And certainly what we've also been able to see is things like creative wear out. So if there's a particular form of creative in market, you can compare that to other forms of creative. You can also see reach and frequency. You can see how potentially a creative swap would potentially generate better returns on investment, returns on ad spend.
So with that in mind and the discussion we had about attribution earlier today, it seems like in some ways then I'm getting a little bit more of a single shot view of several of the sources that would go into my attribution modeling. Can you talk a little bit about what Samba's doing on that front?
Well, we have a couple of attribution products in market. We work with partners who have very robust MTA solutions. But one of the areas where we've seen quite a lot of traction is among the broadcast community. Folks that want to drive tune-in to new shows, to premieres, new shows that are coming on air. And they'll spend billions of dollars every year to do that, either in outdoor or on TV, on promos on air, on digital. And with a real-time viewership data set, you can actually see how a marketing investment online converts to new viewers. And you can see that feedback loop almost instantly, or to be able to optimize that to a much higher degree and much quicker. So that's an area of attribution that we've produced a product that we call verified tune-in rate. It's one that is one where we've been actually able to, we were talking about walled gardens earlier and how it's difficult to get attribution data out of the walled gardens. We had, I won't name the walled garden, but we had 51 customers, according to them, actually tell them that we would spend more money with your platform if we could actually see conversion through Samba. If we could see that spending money with you is going to convert into a new viewer. And it worked. We actually did get one of the walled gardens to open up and to produce these kinds of KPIs for that category of demand. Certainly another area is when an advertiser wants to use TV to drive some form of engagement online. And because the smart TV is associated with an IP address and mapped to device IDs on a one-to-one basis, you can see an effect of TV advertising on some form of engagement on a cross-screen device, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a PC, almost instantly.
So if you were speaking to an agency, and we're thinking about return path data, and we're thinking about other currencies or predictive or ratings that are in the marketplace, what would be kind of your recommendation for how those things can work together or the future of them working together?
Well, certainly the challenge that many broadcasters have is that panel-based measurement of one screen is showing ratings declines year over year. Linear is not as relevant as it was last year. Certainly new forms of consumption are taking off, as we heard earlier from some of the panels. I think the publishers have to get comfortable with the idea that their content's going to be consumed and measured outside of the television. And that would make data much more available to the demand side, who would like to be able to address this, but needs third-party data, third-party verification of those audiences. So it's still early days for the publishers to fully embrace that concept.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about how it's moving in terms of the data sets, and those are all kind of triangulating against one another and working together to try to formulate some version of the truth. And at some point they'll hopefully come together and you'll see that single shot view more. We are out of time, but maybe if there's just one quick question from the audience, we'll take it. That's great. Thanks for chatting.
Thanks, John.